the future? Jamie.
Well, good, because you won't. The idea was that this was a double act between myself and Professor Richard Lucas, in which I was going to explain about a particular Welsh project, the WISE network, and then Richard was going to expand on the spatial modelling. Now, I think it a truly cowardly move. Richard immigrated to Australia so he wouldn't have to do it with me. And his replacement, Chris Thomas, refused to come with me this morning. So I'm going to try and do it. I apologise to my colleagues in the spatial modelling aspect. I can't do it judgment. What I have done, though, is I've tried to use it to lead into some of the areas, Chris, that we do in IBIS, and I think that'll lead on from what Dave's speaking. But first of all, the first part, so the WISE network, Welsh Institute of Sustainable Environments. This is a collaboration between three of the Welsh universities, Bangor, Swansea, and ourselves in Aberystwyth, which seeks to support Welsh companies, particularly small Welsh companies, in growth in the green economy, trying to help them develop new products and services in order to try to develop a culture of collaboration between the industrial sector and the academic area in this area of sustainability, trying to give access to the companies, to the significant investments there's been in Wales in terms of facilities and technical activities, to cause a dialogue between academic colleagues and commercial colleagues to try and both help them, but also obviously help us in driving our research, and to try and continue to drive innovation within this important sector. It's a large project. It's £12 million worth of funding, and it works over a range of areas. My own particular area is in the area of sustainable health and well-being, so we're working both in Aberystwyth and in colleagues in Bangor on new plant varieties that will improve human health. So my colleagues in Bangor have developed new barley varieties that will be particularly suitable for those of us with type 2 diabetes. We're working on local plant extracts that affect on gut fermentations, both in humans, but also importantly commercially, in other markets, for instance, the companion animal market, which is an enormous economic market, and the use of native Welsh plants to produce bioactives that can be useful in these areas. We're also active in process monitoring, quality control. Colleagues in the room from the Biocomposite Centre engaged in this. This is about ensuring raw materials are of the right quality, ensuring products are of the right quality, and make sure the processing is there. Sustainable product development, trying to develop new products from sustainable bases, new forms of packaging, new forms of building materials. Again, biocomposites greatly involved. Research, resource efficiency, working over this complete life cycle. So I've heard this earlier in the day, but taking a cradle to grave approach to new products and designing in the recycling aspects to products as they're developed. And then with colleagues in Swansea University, looking at ecological engineering, looking at how we can use landscapes to provide products. And all of these areas working in collaboration and brought together by a cross-cutting theme on sustainable systems. So all of the companies and all of the academic partners that are involved are undertaking specific environmental and sustainability actions as we go through the project. So that's what WISE is, and at this stage I hope to sit down and Richard walk in, but that's not going to happen. So I'm going to try and talk a little bit about the environment and remote sensing area. First of all, maybe just giving you two examples of the work that we do, but Marie's in the audience, so when the questions come, Marie, you should have hidden because I can now see you. So remote sensing, I think you all know about GIS, we've clearly heard about earlier in this session. And the challenge here is how do you use these to help business development in Wales? And again, to reiterate Dave's point, it's not just within Wales, it's Welsh companies and it's looking international. So one example is a company that's based down in Lampeter. They're involved in carbon offsetting of planting trees in Kenya, and Maria and her colleagues using remote sensing technologies to help verify where these trees are growing. And my slides are now changing themselves, so excuse. So using remote sensing to sort of verify where these trees are planting, helping the company verify their product and develop their product market. Closer to home, given that I have to drive back to Aberystwyth later today, is work on imaging of road hauls. So using imaging technologies to automate the collection of information about our roadways. So working with CostAid to develop new technologies for looking at roadways, trying to improve it. So working with companies large and small within Wales to try and generate new business opportunities. Oops. Where it becomes interesting to me is to follow on a little bit from Dave's talk, is how this technology in remote sensing, imaging, GIS, how can it help feed in to this challenge that I think Dave provided us with of sustainable intensification, or is, in my mind, an increasing demand on land, that land will have to do many things as ecosystem services, as we've heard, but there's a number of productive outcomes. So how can we understand that? So clearly at a simple level, we can start to understand types of land cover characterization. We can understand what should go on where and what kind of resources we should use. I think, just to give an example of some of the things that have come to my mind as I think about this, this is some data on land use and so-called unproductive land. One of the things we're doing in Aberystwyth with my colleagues Marisha Fraser and Ian Donison is actually starting to look at what the biomass in some of these areas that has to be harvested to maintain the biodiversity. What else can you do with it? If it's going to be harvested, is it of use? So clearly you can use it as a biofuel, and we've had a successful project based on that. But can you use it for wider levels? Can you actually use it to start generating high-value chemicals? And this is a project joint between ourselves and Bangor in Italy, using grass grown in plots rather than the uplands, but just showing that actually you can move beyond simply thinking of grazing as an animal food, and we can try and move away from a petrol-based, oil-based agricultural system. So in this system, we're taking the grass, squeezing it to get a grass juice. That's a high sugar, highly fermentable source that we can ferment into ethanol and into other things. But of course, the byproduct that you get left is still a perfectly valid animal feed. And actually, the scenario in this project, which is called STARS, is the follow-up project that's running, is take the grass, squeeze it, ferment a portion of it into lactic acid. From lactic acid, you can make plastic. A proportion of it into ethanol to make a fuel. Feed a proportion of the fibre to dairy cows to get milk. Cogs and biocomposites, using a portion of the fibre to make packaging. So you've now got milk that you can put in plastic made from grass, put that plastic bottles of milk in containers made of grass, and drive them to the supermarket in vehicles powered by grass. Economically, not a big player at the moment. But it gives ideas as to how we might develop. And what you're calling unproductive land in these models isn't. It's biomass. I think the challenge for us is how we think of using that biomass going forward. And it's got to go beyond simply as an animal feed. It has to do other things for us. Now, one of the things that's key within the project, one of the key ambitions within Wales is to provide a LiDAR map for Wales, a spatially aware map. Other than knowing that it's lasers coming from planes and it gives you a topology of the land, I'm afraid my knowledge of LiDAR has just finished. But again, I have colleagues who will tell us about it. But what I'm interested in is what can it do for us and how, again, can it help us address some of the challenges that we were presented with earlier. So I understand that one of the things we can get is really good topological information about slopes, about management. We can start thinking about flood risk, flood management, land management, and planning. So we can start thinking about how that landscape affects clear ecosystem services. What I'm then thinking about is, well, how do we input the kind of science that we do as agricultural scientists into that? And one of the areas that we've been working on for a while now is producing new grass varieties by crossing fesculoleum with lolium. And by repeated back crossing, you can get stable new fesculoleum varieties. So these are new varieties that are genetically stable, created by back crossing approaches. The reason this is interesting is that fesculoleum have enormously deep rooting systems. So you can see here the roots, structures of these plants, and actually quite visually, the sort of length of rooting that you're capable of producing. We've now, this year, launched our first commercial fesculoleum variety, Aberystwyth, which has all the productive yields of a normal lolium grass, but it has this big, deep rooting system. And of course, if you can improve the rooting system, then you can start doing very real inputs on things like water retention in soil. So adding that to my colleagues in the remote sensings, knowledge of where flooding occurs, new plant varieties may come forward that allow us to manage these risks. The other little picture I have there is just to remind me to tell you a little bit about some of the investments that are happening in Wales. This is an automated phenomics glasshouse that's been installed down in Aberystwyth. Basically, it allows us to image new plants on a highly rapid level. What that means is it speeds up by a factor of 3 our ability to develop new plant varieties. So I think, as we go forward, our ability to bring new plant varieties forward that meet ecosystem challenges is really strengthened. So as I said, there'll be new grass varieties that are better at preventing soil erosion, as Dave showed a very graphic picture of, better at reducing flooding. Because we're seeing more root growth, we should see better carbon capture. There'll be influences on water quality. I have to say, I thought they'd be good, but I'm now worried from the example of trees, whether they will be positive. That's really useful in Wales, but looking more outside of Wales, of course, the other aspect of deeper rooting fesculoleum grasses is they're far more drought resistant. So in other challenged climates where they're going to have to adapt to significantly different climates, these varieties will help. So there's a real future, I think, in trying to breed specific plants and then use the kind of spatially aware information to know a way we should use them to get the kind of services we wish. Other aspects that the LIDAR project would hopefully give us is an increased knowledge of plant structures, canopy structures, soil carbon, and where we should plant specific crops. Again, in terms of the work that we're involved in within Aberystwyth, this I think will help inform us in our activities based around biofuel crops. We've got Europe's biggest miscanthus breeding program in Wales. Miscanthus is elephant grass. It's a couple of metres high. The real interest in it is that it grows very rapidly. It's a C4 grass. It has a very high level biomass production. But when it senesces, it puts all of the nutrients other than carbon back into the soil. So it doesn't strip soil of minerals. It allows you to harvest effectively pure carbon. So it's a very attractive crop in that sense. What we've been doing is we've been establishing a gene base of this by collecting varieties from around the world, looking at how these will grow in different scenarios, and using this to provide maps of how different levels of germplasm might perform in the UK. And this clearly also will have to be at a much neater, finer spatial scale than I'm showing there. And then lastly, just to finish off in an area of my own interest, the other thing that LiDAR mapping is allowing us is to start looking at where certain crops can be grown, look at the consumption of those crops by livestock so we can remotely monitor grass consumption by ruminants. Dave mentioned the challenges of greenhouse gas production by ruminants. I think there are real things we can do there, Dave, in terms of plant varieties. We've been working, as I've tried to express, in terms of a plant breeding approach. And one approach we have come across is the use of new plant varieties, high sugar grasses, which have, again, the same yield, actually promote significantly higher yields of lamb, but do so with a 20% reduction in methane emissions per animal. So my conclusion is that there are real challenges, but I think there are solutions. They will have to be mapped sustainably. Thank you.
Jamie, thank you very much. Is there a wise question for Jamie? Bridget.
Jamie, just having been caught in the crossfire myself, this idea of unproductive land.
Yeah, I don't think it's...
And of course, in terms of animal production it is, but Dave Jones and I did a book for Welsh Government, perhaps we could look at unproductive land. We weren't brave enough to say what Dave Chadwick said, which was bracken land, because of course then our CCW colleagues said, A, how do we know in terms of carbon sequestration and all that it was doing, and B, were we aware of all the different species that use bracken in various things. And so it just kind of brings me back to the challenges that we have and what we all value these different areas. I mean, we're a small island, a tiny country, and every bit of land has value for something or another, as any of us we try and do an extension to our house knows. And the world of the dog is on your case, so I just wonder whether how are we going to do that?
I think the term unproductive is pointless. I don't think it's useful. What I was trying to say is, I think we just haven't thought enough about how it can be productive to us. And I think, if we're going to harvest biomass off that land in order to improve biodiversity, let's look at what we can do with that biomass.
Okay, thank you very much, speakers, for your interesting contributions. I hope everybody's enjoyed a quick and brief insight into science in Wales, and thank you all for joining in and asking questions, and we now go back for the final plenary session. Thank you, everybody.